Namaste, and welcome to this short practice for the feet. I decided I would get the camera really close today so that you could see exactly what was going on with the feet. We are going to do just a few movements to help build strength and mobility across the feet so that you can feel stronger on your foundation, and it will help you maintain your balance and your mobility as you travel through life. It's also great if you happen to be rehabbing a cobbled ankle, a sprained ankle, or if you're building strength back up after perhaps having your legs in plaster for a break or a similar sort of injury. So I've used a purple mat here, so hopefully you can really see the movement across the feet. And before we start, I must just say I have monkey toes. I've always had really mobile toes, but I have kept them that way by doing movements such as the ones we are going to do today. And even if you don't start with great mobility, you can still build mobility by doing these practices over time. It will get better. Practice is the key. So keep dedicating some time towards your yoga as often as possible. So begin with having it sitting down or standing up. You can do it either way, but sitting down gives you a little bit more opportunity to focus on the feet, and you can lean slightly forward, just making sure that you've got some activation across your belly muscles and it feels good for your body. You can lean your hands onto your legs to help, so that you can see what's going on with your feet. Or if, like me, you've got a screen ahead of you, you can watch your feet on the screen. So we're going to take the feet just around about hip width apart, and hip width apart is usually more narrow than you imagine. It's about the width of the palm of your hand between your feet. And it can be wider if you prefer, but about there is going to give us a good opportunity to move the ankles in relation to the hips and knees. Try to make your knees around about over your ankles. If your feet are too far back, it's much harder to move them. You get much less room to move. And if they're too far forward, then again, you've got less control, although you can try it and see how you get on. So here we're going to start with just moving the toes. So we want to move the toes as much as feels comfortable, or as much as you're able to do without creating cramp or strain or force. And you can begin to see if you've got a little bit of individual movement. You can even have your heels away to let your toes really wiggle around, if that's good, if you find it easier than doing it against the mat. So kind of mobilizing, seeing if you feel comfortable, seeing if there are any areas that feel more stuck. I've got one foot that moves a little bit more than the other. Most people do. And then resting all of the toes down, trying to spread the toes out as much as feels comfortable to get some space in between the toes. So here we're trying to stretch our toes away rather than grip the mat and draw it back towards us. So if you can, and it helps sometimes to do it with your hands as well, because we make sympathetic movements with the hands and the feet. So if spreading your fingers helps you to feel like you're creating space between your toes, then go for it. You'll notice that my hands probably move as my feet do as well. Then relaxing the toes for a moment. We're going to press the big toes down and try to lift the other toes away from the floor. And then press the other toes down and try to lift the big toes away from the floor. So we're just going from one to the other, trying to move across the toes themselves. And sometimes, again, it can help to move with your hands as well. Just doing a few, notice if you begin to feel the muscle activation across the calves, or any strain, and work gently. So you're more likely to do a practice if it creates a sense of movement and space and ease than if it creates strain and pain. We never want strain and pain. Super. And then here we're going to just gently rock onto the toes and then rock onto the heels. We do this in chair yoga quite a lot. It's quite a nice way to move across the length of the foot. And I have a tendency as I come up to let my ankles come out to the sides. So if you have that tendency as well, just trying to bring your ankles more into center. You can, of course, move up and then allow that action if you would like. Because we're not loading the body, we can allow a little bit of exploration into those parts of the body. But it would be better to maybe move the ankles in and out in that upright toe position, tiptoe position. Very good. And then back down. Just a few more times backwards and forwards. Nice simple movements. And then resting your feet down, we're going to roll the effort of the foot in towards the big toes, lifting the other toes up, but actually just keeping the rest of the foot on the floor, and then lifting the big toes away as we roll the effort into the outside edge of the foot. So here we're really moving in this sort of twisty sensation or twisty fashion, the foot. And across the ball of the foot particularly. And this is really good for the areas just down the insides and outsides of the ankles, where particularly folks who are mobile across their ankles sometimes come into bother with easily going over an ankle or straining those ligaments. Here we want to avoid bringing the knees together and apart because we're not trying to do it from the hips, which would be quite easy, but to do it from the ankles themselves. So knees relatively still as you roll to the inside and outside edge of the foot, trying to focus on the big toe joint being down as you come to the inside and the little toe being down as you move to the outside. And this, if it's a new movement to you, might be quite toughy to begin with, but it's worth persevering because this one particularly is really good for helping us maintain a solid foundation on our feet and reacting to different surfaces as we walk. Very good. And then just relaxing a moment. I'm going to sit all the way back in my chair so that my thighs are supported, so I can let my feet be free from the floor and give the ankles a little bit of a roll. So I'm not trying to do any particular movement here. I'm trying to just create a little bit of movement, lubrication across the joints there. Very good. And maybe just a little swing of the feet backwards and forwards. Check you've got nothing to kick underneath your chair. So nice gentle movements just to release a little bit of strain. You can even move a little bit side to side as well. Sorry, it always makes me feel like a little girl in the playground when I do movements like this. Maybe a little bit round and round. Super. When you're ready, you can come back to having the feet on the floor, and then you can rock up onto the toe tips of one foot, and then back through the ball, heel to the floor. Rock onto the toe tips of the opposite foot, ball of the foot, heel to the floor. So we're just rocking through the whole length of the foot, really finding some slow, steady movement there. So we create the opportunity for lots of muscular engagement and beginning to develop a real sensory awareness of the bits of the foot that are on the floor. Lovely job. Let's do one more to each side. These are again a little tougher if you're not used to doing them, so just taking your time. I've ended up with 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. There we are. And then here we can do opposite heels and feet. So one heel up, the opposite toes up, and then go from side to side. This is another lovely one to help develop some stability and strength, but also activation of the low leg. If you spend a lot of time sitting and you're about to stand up and walk, it's a really good one to do to enhance the energetic connection to the feet before you move. And then finally, resting your feet down, we're going to bring the feet all the way together and then angle the feet in and out. So heels out, toes out, heels out, toes out, heels out, toes out, as far as feels comfortable for you to go, further if you wish, narrower if you choose, and then toes in, heels in, toes in, heels in, toes in, heels in. And we do this a couple of times. So just doing this nice pivoting on the heels, pivoting on the toes, pivoting on the heels, and then the opposite way as well. And we just need to lift our toes and heels enough to make it easy for the rest of the leg to articulate on the point that remains on the floor. And this is really good practice, particularly if you're doing yoga, because we move our feet, particularly when we're standing on them, quite often just by this little pivot. So if you're doing this with the feet going in opposite directions, that's great, but you can also do the feet going in the same direction. You can slightly twist yourself on your chair and then come back the opposite way. It's quite nice to practice the feet both going in the same direction, because often the feet work in conjunction with each other, but of course, often they don't. I don't know if you can have two offens, but there we are, coming back to center when you're ready. And then this concludes the final part of our seated practice, but we're going to come to standing up now. And so I'm going to move my chair here so that it's on the mat, and hopefully you'll be able to see as I work here. Let's see how we go. There we go. Good job. So here we want to use a little bit of support. So it could be a wall, it could be a chair like this. And we're going to just have the feet underneath the hips and float up onto the tiptoes, and then extend the heels down to the floor. So here we can rock the weight back into the heels and then rock the weight forward into the toes to be able to lift the heels up and then lower down. If you want to be really fancy, you can do a progression of this exercise. So I will show you in just a few moments. But for now, we're going to just lift and lower, trying to get perhaps progressively higher. So on this leg, I can come up really high because this foot is very comfortable doing that. But on my opposite leg, I get a little bit of arthritis in my big toe joint, and so it doesn't like to come up quite so high. That's mostly, I think, from doing ballet when I was young. And then lots and lots of other things as well, I'm sure. So a little bit up and down, trying to get higher, or as high as feels comfortable without creating any cramp in the body. We want the body to be strong if possible. When you've done a few of those, you can give your knees a nice little soft bend. Will help to stretch out the calf and across the back of the low leg. And then we can do side to side. So we can lift the heel of one foot and then float the opposite heel off as we lower the heel of the first foot. So we're trying to go from side to side. If you're holding onto your chair, you can do a fingertip hold, so you get as much practice as possible at balancing here, using a little bit of core strength and trying to have that sensation almost of floating. And the heel that touches down, if you want to progress, you can just kiss it to the floor without really putting any weight into it. Or you can even keep it ever so slightly away from the floor, which will make your legs work a little bit harder. Those supporting muscles work a little bit more. Very good. Very nice to go side to side. When you're ready, you can release both feet down and give your toes a little bit of a wiggle. For those who are comfortable, you can turn the top of the foot towards the floor to stretch out the front of the foot and the front of the ankle. I quite enjoy doing that. If you wish to do a bit more, you can put a little bit more weight into it, but it's not for everybody. So the other side, just turning the toes to the floor, putting a little bit of extra weight into it if you wish to, or not, as the case may be. And if it feels not comfortable to turn the top of the foot to the floor, you can simply point your toes to the floor or point your toes back, but have your foot off the floor. So there's no weight, but you're getting the opportunity to move the foot in that direction. And it's the whole foot, as opposed to what we were doing in our movement, which is just the ball of the foot downwards. Bend of the knees, if you'd like to. And then our final practice, for those who would like to progress a little bit of strength, is to bring the legs perhaps a little bit closer together and just hook one foot behind the other, and then doing the heel raises with just one leg. And that is, if you find all of the other movements quite comfortable, then heel raises with just one foot is progression for you, but it is not for everybody. So just hooking the foot around the other leg to do a little bit of heel raising. We've done all of this with the feet in line with the hips. But for those who would like to do something else, you might bring your heels together and also come up and down. I like to alternate this with a little bend of the knees. So first position, if you have done ballet before, heels together, toes turned out, a little up onto the balls of the feet, and then bending the knees after the heels come down. And that allows different parts of our legs to work. And you can do the same thing, turning the toes in and the heels out, up onto tiptoes, coming down. You might not want to bend your knees so deeply if they crash together, but same sort of thing. By doing something out of the linear patterns of just feet straight in front of the hips, then you get different parts of the legs to move. And when you're ready, you can give your feet a little shake out, maybe a roll at the ankles. And remember not to do too much all in one go. So that was a lot. If you're not used to doing the practice, that was quite a lot to do all in one go. But when you're finished, you can give your toes a little bit of a wiggle, and hopefully your feet feel lovely and energized, and you're ready for the rest of your day. Namaste.